I never imagined betrayal would find me in the place I felt safest, in the arms of the man I had promised forever to. 4 years I believed my marriage was built on trust, on love, on sacrifices I made without hesitation, because that is what wives do, that is what I thought love demanded. Every meal I cooked, every night I stayed awake waiting for him to come home, every dream I shaped around his presence, it all felt like pieces of a life we were building together. And then, in a moment so sharp it felt like a blade sliding into my chest, that illusion shattered. The man I thought would fight for me, protect me, cherish me, instead chose the cruelest betrayal imaginable. He left me, and he left me not for a stranger, but for my own sister. The shock was unbearable, the kind that leaves you frozen in place, unable to breathe, unable to cry, because your body cannot comprehend the cruelty it has just been struck with. I remember the day I found out, the way my sister avoided my eyes, the way his voice trembled not out of guilt, but out of fear of being caught. Their secret, the one they had tried so carefully to bury, rose up between us like a fire that consumed every memory I thought was mine. How could he look at me for years, hold me in his arms, kiss me with promises, and yet be giving pieces of himself to her in the shadows? How could my own sister, the girl who grew up sharing my toys, my secrets, my childhood, become the thief of my happiness? People talk about heartbreak as if it is something that only affects the heart, but when I tell you that my entire body ached, that even the smallest task like lifting a glass of water, or stepping out of bed felt like dragging chains across my skin, I mean it. Betrayal is not just emotional, it is physical. It burns through your veins, it poisons every thought, it convinces you that you are worthless, that you were never enough, that if even your own blood and your own husband could conspire against you, then perhaps there were. The shock was not just in their betrayal, but in the realization that everything I thought was unshakable could be destroyed so quickly. One moment I was a wife, a sister, a woman building a life surrounded by love, and the next I was nothing more than the discarded piece of someone else's fantasy. The house I had decorated with dreams now felt like a cage, every corner a reminder of their deceit. The table where we once ate together was where whispers had been exchanged behind my back. The phone that once buzzed with his messages of affection now mocked me with its silence. When betrayal comes from strangers, you can dismiss it, you can convince yourself it doesn't matter. But when it comes from your own blood, your own home, it becomes a wound that refuses to close. It is like being stabbed, but forced to live with the knife still inside you, twisting every time you breathe. My sister, how could she? She had been my confidant, the one I defended when the world was cruel to her, the one I thought would always protect me as I protected her. She knew my fears, my weaknesses, my dreams, and instead of guarding them, she used them to destroy me. I replayed the moment he left me for her 1,000 times in my head. The way he avoided my gaze, the way he muttered words that sounded like excuses, but were nothing more than cowardice. There was no apology, only justification. He told me he had found something he had been missing, as if I were incomplete, as if my love was not enough to fill the void in his heart. The audacity of those words cut deeper than any knife. My love, my sacrifices, my loyalty, none of it mattered. He reduced me to a stepping stone, a chapter he wanted to close so he could write a new one with her. And still, even as my world fell apart, society demanded I keep my head high. People whispered behind my back, judging me, questioning what I must have done wrong to drive my husband away. They didn't see the betrayal, they only saw the abandoned wife. Every day became a battle between wanting to collapse and forcing myself to survive. The shock of betrayal was not something I could outrun, it lived with me, followed me into every conversation, every dream, every moment of solitude. It whispered in my ear that I was unworthy, that I had lost everything, that the two people I loved most had chosen each other over me. And yet, even in that darkness, there was a flicker inside me, something that refused to be extinguished. Perhaps it was anger slowly building. Perhaps it was the remnants of a strength I didn't know I had. I didn't act on it yet. I didn't even recognize it fully, but it was there, waiting for its time. Because the story was not over, because though they thought they had destroyed me, though they thought they had left me with nothing, they would come to see that the woman they betrayed was not the woman who would remain forever broken. Pain is not always loud. Sometimes it sits quietly inside your chest, pressing against your ribs until every breath feels like a struggle. After the betrayal, I discovered a kind of pain I had never known before, one that did not simply sting for a moment, but lingered, stretching itself across every hour of my life. It was the kind of pain that woke me in the middle of the night, with my heart racing and my body shaking as if my soul was trying to escape a prison it could not break. There were mornings when the sun rose outside my window, but for me, the world remained in darkness. I would stare at the ceiling, listening to the silence in the room that once echoed with his voice, and the absence was louder than any sound. My bed, which once felt warm with his presence, turned into a cold battlefield of memories. I could still hear his laughter, still feel the ghost of his touch, but those echoes now poisoned me. Every memory that used to make me smile now cut deeper into my skin, reminding me that those moments were lies, that while I was giving my heart, he was giving his. There were days when I would sit in the kitchen staring at the empty chair where he once sat, waiting for him to walk in, even though I knew he never would. There were nights when I picked up my phone to call my sister out of habit, before remembering that she was no longer my sister, but my rival, my thief. And every time I forgot for even a second, the reminder returned sharper, cutting into me like broken glass. The pain was not just in losing them, it was in the constant remembering. I began to avoid people. Their questions, their pity, their curiosity, it all felt like salt in my wound. Some whispered that maybe I had not been a good wife, others suggested that perhaps I was too blind to see what had been happening under my nose. Each word, each look, made the pain worse, because instead of sympathy, I was met with blame. Betrayal takes your dignity, but society ensures you never get it back. Loneliness became my shadow. I could be surrounded by people, yet still feel invisible. I laughed when others laughed, but inside, I was screaming. I wore a mask every day, hiding the storm raging inside me, because the world does not pause for your pain. Bills still needed to be paid, chores still needed to be done, life still moved forward, but I was stuck in the same moment of betrayal, unable to step out of it. The depth of pain also came with confusion. There were nights I hated him so much I wanted to erase his name from my memory, and yet I longed for him, craved the comfort of the very arms that had betrayed me. That was the cruelest part, loving the person who destroyed you. I despised myself for missing him, for hoping he would return, for checking my phone to see if his name appeared on the screen. The pain was not just in what they did, but in what I became because of it, weak, desperate, broken. Every corner of the house whispered their betrayal. The bed where I once dreamed of a future now felt like a coffin. The mirror reflected not a wife, not a sister, but a St. The worst part was that I could not find an escape. Sleep did not bring peace, because dreams betrayed me too, filling my nights with images of them together. Waking up was no better, because the reality was just as cruel. I carried the pain everywhere, into the grocery store, into conversations with neighbors, into the quiet moments alone. It was inescapable, a constant reminder that I had been destroyed by the two people I loved most. And yet, deep within that pain, a seed was being planted. I did not know it at the time, but every tear, every ache, every sleepless night was shaping me into someone I would one day recognize. Pain has a way of burning away illusions, leaving behind only truth. I did not see it then, but in the depth of my suffering, I was being prepared for something greater, for a moment when the pain would no longer control me, but would fuel me. For now, though, I lived in its shadow, drowning in silence, suffocated by memories, unable to escape the endless ache of betrayal that defined every second of my existence. They paraded their love like it was something sacred, like it had bloomed from purity, and not from the ashes of my broken heart. To the outside world, they looked like two people who had found each other against all odds, two souls intertwined in a romance that was meant to be. But I knew better. Their so-called love was not born out of destiny, it was built out of deceit, betrayal, and stolen trust. It was a mask, carefully painted to hide the ugliness underneath, and while others admired it, I could see the cracks spreading across its surface. I watched them, not because I wanted to, but because life gave me no choice. Their whispers followed me wherever I went. Neighbors who once smiled at me now whispered behind closed doors, eyes glancing at me with pity before shifting to them with curiosity. My sister, the one who shared my childhood, stood proudly at his side as if she had earned the right to hold his hand, as if she hadn't ripped. What hurt most was remembering how he once looked at me the way he now looked at her. The same smile, the same tender gestures, the same rehearsed words that once convinced me I was his only one. Now those very gestures were handed to her, as if they had no meaning, as if all the promises he once made to me were nothing but lines from a script he could perform for anyone. His love was not love at all, it was performance, and she was his newest stage partner. The mask they wore was convincing, I will admit that. To those who didn't know the story, they looked happy. But when I looked closely, I saw what others missed. I saw the way his eyes darted when someone mentioned me, the way her laughter faltered for just a second when I entered a room. I saw the nervous glances they exchanged, the quick tightening of her grip on his arm as if to remind him that he belonged to her now. It wasn't love that bound them, it was fear. Fear of being exposed, fear of the truth slipping through the cracks of their carefully built facade. There were nights when I lay awake replaying every interaction, every detail, every moment that had led us here. I realized that long before the betrayal was revealed, the mask had already been in place. The late-night calls he dismissed as work, the sudden changes in his mood, the way she avoided my gaze at family dinners, these had been the signs, the rehearsals for the grand performance they were preparing. I had been the audience even then, blind to the fact that I was watching my own downfall being scripted in front of me. The mask of their love was heavy, and I knew it would not last forever. Pretending requires effort, and effort always cracks under the weight of time. But while I waited for that mask to slip, I lived in the torment of watching them wear it so proudly. Every smile they shared felt like a mockery of the pain I endured. Every time they held hands in public, it was as if they were saying, "Look at us, look at what we've taken, look at H." Sometimes I would catch glimpses of the cracks. A fight that left her eyes red, a silence between them at a gathering, the way he sometimes looked away when she spoke as if he were already bored of her voice. Those were the moments that reminded me the mask could never last. Their love was fragile, made of lies and secrecy, and no matter how beautifully they painted it, the truth would always rot the foundation. Still, I had to suffer in silence as they tried to prove otherwise, as they performed day after day, desperate to convince the world of their fairy tale. The pain of watching them was sharper than the betrayal itself. It was not enough that they had destroyed me, they wanted to replace me, erase me, rewrite my story as if I had never existed. Their mask of love was their weapon, and every smile was another strike against my dignity. People began to forget I had ever been part of his life. They looked at them and saw a couple in love, not a man who had abandoned his vows or a sister who had betrayed her blood. Their mask was powerful, blinding everyone to the truth, leaving me alone with my pain. But as I watched, something inside me began to shift. With every false smile they shared, with every whispered lie they told, I began to see them not as lovers, but as actors in a play that would not last. And though their mask hurt me deeply, it also began to teach me. It taught me that their love was hollow, that I was not the one who had been replaced, but the one who had been freed. It taught me that the mask would one day fall, and when it did, the world would finally see the truth. Until then, I endured, silent but watchful, carrying the knowledge that their performance was temporary, that the mask they wore would one day crumble and reveal the emptiness underneath. There comes a moment when pain stops being a chain and starts becoming a spark. For a long time, I lived in silence, carrying the weight of betrayal like a stone tied around my neck, drowning in memories I could not escape. But something inside me refused to stay broken forever. I woke up one morning, looked at my face in the mirror, and for the first time in months, I did not see the woman he had abandoned or the sister who had betrayed me. I saw a survivor staring back, tired, scarred, but alive. And that realization became the first step toward rising from the ashes they left me in. It didn't happen overnight. Healing is never sudden, it is slow, painful, and often feels impossible. At first, I forced myself to do simple things. I opened the curtains to let light in, even though I preferred the darkness. I brushed my hair, even when I didn't care how I looked. I cooked meals for myself, small ones at first, just to prove that I could take care of me, because for too long I had been taking care of others. These little acts felt meaningless at the time, but looking back, they were the foundations of my strength returning. Each act whispered, "You are still here, you are still alive, you are still enough." The world did not stop being cruel. People still whispered, still stared, still judged. But slowly, their words began to matter less. I realized their gossip did not define me, their opinions did not carve my worth. What defined me was how I chose to live after the destruction, whether I let the betrayal consume me or transform me. I chose transformation, even if it was painful. Every tear I had shed became fuel. Every sleepless night became motivation. I decided I would not let them win by remaining broken. If they wanted to see me ruined, I would rise just to defy them. I began to rebuild myself, not just emotionally, but in every way. I started reading again, filling my mind with stories of women who endured storms far worse than mine and still found strength. I joined. I still carried the pain, of course. Healing does not erase memories, it reshapes them. The betrayal never disappeared, but it stopped controlling me. When their faces flashed in my mind, I no longer collapsed. Instead, I reminded myself that their choices revealed who they were, not who I was. They were weak, deceitful, selfish. I was not the one who needed to be ashamed, they were. That shift in perspective became my weapon. Every time I thought of their so-called happiness, I told myself it was temporary. A love built on betrayal cannot survive forever, but a woman who rises from ashes cannot be destroyed again. I found new routines, new passions, new reasons to keep moving. I poured my energy into building a future where I stood alone, but strong. People who once pitied me began to notice the change. They saw me walking with my head high again, speaking with confidence, smiling, not the forced smile of someone pretending to be okay, but the genuine smile of someone who has fought through fire and come out alive. Their whispers shifted from pity to admiration. And though I did not rise for them, their change in tone reminded me of the power of resilience. I had been the woman left behind, the woman broken, but now I was becoming the woman who refused to be defeated. I remember one particular day vividly. I walked past the two of them in town, and for the first time, my heart did not ache. My legs did not tremble, my eyes did not fill with tears. Instead, I looked at them calmly, even smiled. They expected me to shrink, to turn away, but I didn't. That moment was not about them, it was about me. It was proof that I had risen above the ashes, that they no longer had power over me. Their betrayal had destroyed the old version of me, but in its place, it had created someone stronger, wiser, unbreakable. The ashes of betrayal still lingered around me, but I no longer feared them. They reminded me of where I had been, of the fire I had endured, of the pain I had survived. The power of choice also came in deciding what role they would play in my story. I could let them remain the villains who ruined me, or I could turn them into the stepping stones that made me stronger. I chose the latter. I chose to see them not as destroyers of my life, but as teachers who showed me the reality of the world, the fragility of trust, and the strength of my own resilience. By reframing their betrayal, I stripped it of its power to define me. They no longer held control over my narrative, I did. When he came back, begging for forgiveness, his presence tested the strength of my choices. Every word he spoke was an attempt to pull me back into the past, to make me believe that reconciliation was the path I should take. And maybe once, long ago, I would have chosen him again, blinded by love and loyalty. But this time, I had a new awareness, a new clarity. I realized that choosing him again would be choosing pain, choosing to reopen scars that had only just begun to heal. So I made the hardest choice of all. I chose to close the door. Not with hatred, not with vengeance, but with the quiet dignity of a woman who finally understood her worth. The power of choice also meant choosing not to let bitterness consume me. It would have been easy to spend my life hating him, despising her, cursing the years I lost. But what would that have given me except more emptiness? Instead, I chose peace. I chose to release them from my heart, not for their sake, but for mine. I chose to carry the lesson, not the pain. This decision was not easy, and some days the memory still burned, but every time I felt myself slipping back into the darkness, I reminded myself that I had the power to decide where my mind and heart would go. With every choice, I became stronger. With every decision to rise instead of fall, to grow instead of shrink, I rebuilt myself into someone new. I was no longer the woman defined by her husband's betrayal or her sister's jealousy. I became the woman who see. The man who left me so easily, who betrayed me without hesitation, now stood before me broken by his own choices. His return was not the fairytale reunion he hoped for. It was the mirror of his failure, the proof of his weakness, the echo of the pain he had once inflicted on me. And though he begged for forgiveness, though he pleaded for another chance, I knew his regret would never be enough to erase what he had done, nor would it ever be enough to make me forget the woman I had become without him. The power of choice is something I never truly understood until life forced me to see it clearly. When he left me for my sister, I thought I had no choice, that I was condemned to live with the pain, to accept humiliation, as if it were written in my destiny. I thought I was powerless, a victim of circumstances I could not control. For so long, I lived in the shadow of what was done to me, believing my life was defined by betrayal, shaped by the wounds others inflicted on me. But as time passed, I began to realize that while I could not control what others did, I could control how I responded, how I carried myself, how I built my future from the ruins they left behind. And in that realization, I found my strength. The first choice I made was to stop asking why. For months, my mind had been trapped in endless circles of questions. Why did he leave me? Why did she betray me? Why wasn't I enough? Why was my love not valued? These questions drained me, breaking me down further with every passing day. But one morning, as I stared at my own reflection in the mirror, I chose to let go of those questions. I chose to stop giving them the power to haunt me. The truth was simple: their choices were not a reflection of my worth, but of their weakness, their selfishness, their inability to value what was real. By choosing to stop asking why, I freed myself from their shadows. The next choice was harder. I chose myself. For years, I had poured every ounce of love, loyalty, and sacrifice He begged for another chance, his voice breaking, his hands shaking as if holding on to the last thread of hope. He spoke of the nights he couldn't sleep, haunted by the memory of my face, my touch, my presence. He admitted he thought leaving me would bring him happiness, but instead, it left him with emptiness. He confessed that my sister was not the dream he thought she would be, that her jealousy, her insecurities, her hunger for attention drained him until there was nothing left. He told me he finally understood that what he had thrown away was irreplaceable. His regret poured out like a river, desperate, unstoppable. I listened, but inside me there was no sympathy, no pity. There was only a quiet satisfaction, a sense of power I had never known before. For the first time, he was the weak one, the one begging, the one drowning in pain. And I was the one standing tall, watching him suffer the consequences of choices he made so easily. His regret was not about me, it was about him. He regretted losing comfort, loyalty, stability. He regretted losing someone who had always been there no matter what. But he did not regret betraying me, he regretted being caught in the